is the Chief Executive Officer from Strategicon Pharma sponsor, or Clinical Maestro as well. Anka has over 15 years of experience in the biopharmaceutical industry, working both on the CRO and the sponsor side. She's currently a founder and CEO of Strategicon Pharma, developer of Clinical Maestro, which is the industry's only end-to-end cloud-based platform for clinical trial budgeting, sourcing, and contract management, including strategic alliance, partnership, and partnership management. Previously, she served as head of clinical outsourcing and analytics for BioMarin Pharmaceuticals, where she was responsible for vendor contractual relationship and financial management. She also has several leadership positions with PharmaNet Development Group, which is now Syneos Health, Icon Clinical Research, and eMatagen Corporation. And for Anka's fun fact of the day, Anka is actually a fiction writer, which a lot of people I did not know. She writes poems, essays, and most recently a novel, which I will let her tell you what kind of novel that is at networking break. And she speaks 4 languages. So please welcome Anka Kopasko.
First, I wanted to say how thrilled I am to be here today in this event, which is first of its kind, and working with Deborah as an entrepreneur and trying to do something different about many pain points. And I like your motto of the meeting, which is connecting on business aspects of clinical trials. Because we don't talk enough about the business aspects of clinical trials and the pain that surrounds them. Before starting Strategicon, I was very much in the world of clinical outsourcing and living many of the pains that we are now trying to solve with technology today. And the decision to go from a stable job to starting a company and becoming an entrepreneur, I can tell you it's not an easy one, and it's not an easy path by no means. But it can only be fueled by strong feelings, and I'm a person of strong feelings. And the strong feelings for me was first and foremost passion for this field. I really believe that technology can and will continue to influence our day-to-day life, and that we owe it to ourselves to embrace it, adopt it, recognize it, and foster it. On the other hand, I feel very frustrated by how things have been moving in our industry, particularly in the field of business operations. And looking at new technology coming in our space, it's a void. But I do believe that there is a path forward, and this is what I would like to tell you about. I want to start with a survey which we have recently taken, and that survey is still open, so if you have time, please take it as well. We call it pains in the clinical trial sourcing, and actually in the general business operation space. So what we have found, I think should be of no surprise to you, but what I'm trying to get is to stimulate you to think about how to change some of these challenges, which are actually quite well-known facts. So one of the things that came out of this survey is that about 40% of the sponsors read less than 50% of the proposals they receive. And we asked the question why. It seems like a staggering low number, considering that hundreds of hours and in the hundreds of thousands of dollars are being spent to generate proposals by the service providers. And the recurring theme is the reason why proposals are not being read is because they are hard to read. And because we sponsors, when we send the proposals, and I'm now seeing that even more being on the vendor side, we send them in a way that is not easy to access, like an Excel spreadsheet. And it's not easy to follow the flow or even understand the intent behind a certain selection. The other interesting fact is that about 58% of the sponsors store their bids in email. Now, we know that email comes and goes with a person. I think that is probably not the case so much of large organizations, but it's still staggering that we are so buried in document management around key instrumental elements of clinical outsourcing. And especially now with the focus on inspection readiness and vendor oversight, it is unacceptable that we do not put more organization, let's say, around document management in vendor selection and in outsourcing. About 56% of the sponsors base their study budget on CRO bids alone. That should be a no surprise. I think it was a question before that it was asked to you, Samir, do you need to do a competitive bid? And my answer would be no, if you had the data at your fingertips. You wouldn't have to engage a hopeful CRO or other partner in creating a bid grid in a hope of winning a proposal just to get another budgetary estimate. We should be having the cost at our fingertips. And even more, I would say that there is no mystery in costing clinical trials. And what we are trying to do with Clinical Maestro is demystifying that. As much as there is pretty clear market on buying cars, and you know that Porsche is going to be more expensive than Toyota, so we should be no secret about how much a Porsche costs and how much a Toyota costs. So I think it's about bringing data forward and collecting key data that would take the mystery out of clinical trials and make benchmarking much more powerful than it is today, which is a highly manual process. Another point which I like, and it makes me smile, and you will know why in a second, about 80% of the sponsors do use a bid grid. That's wonderful. But let me tell you, each bid grid, it's different. So we are talking about hundreds of different bid grids. And when you go back and to relate to our providers and our partners, their costing system look nothing like the Merck bid grid. What is coming out, the output of their costing tools, it's not aligned to any of the bid grids, and good luck aligning, because there are no two bid grids that are the same. And I would say personally at BioMarine, I had a bid grid that was no less than 400 lines. Yesterday, we actually went on a presentation about Clinical Maestro. We were asked if we have codes associated with each task in Maestro. And I started smiling because I said, you don't need codes. We are not working in Excel. I don't have to call this task BM2536 because we deconstructed the concept of bid grid. It no longer exists. What we are doing, we are shopping for unique services. And this is the type of revolution in thinking and in, hopefully, technology only brings it together, but it's a revolution in process that should take us away from creating our little standard. Let's open up the standards to everyone, and let's come together as an industry to take the cost associated with proposal writing, proposal due diligence, down, because this cost is by no means insignificant. It's actually quite big across the industry. And the last point, which brings the same theme of the standardization, 93% of the sponsors and CROs that participated in the surveys, they said they would like more standardization. And I think I'd like to refer to the success of Veeva as one company that had a meteoric growth in a record amount of time. And it's part of it, yes, is technology, but it's Salesforce technology. So it's not technology in itself that made them truly successful. What I think made Veeva and other companies truly successful is the approach to the process. And they rallied the industry around the DIA ETMF standards. They try to foster alignment within the industry, and they made it easier for the sponsors and the CRO to speak the same language. And what we are trying to do with Maestro, and what I'm hoping to show you in 10 minutes, 15 minutes today, is a teaser of where we believe the industry must be going. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we as leaders in the industry must be embracing more standardization, more technology, and really pay attention to the cost of doing business. And the cost of doing vendor selection, bid due diligence, benchmarking, clinical forecasting, you name it, all of the things that maybe are not as sexy to talk about as patient centricity or blockchain, they cost the organization a lot of money, both the sponsor in having to support the infrastructure, but for the CROs as well, who are our partners and who have to keep remapping and giving us KPIs and intelligence in a way that is not only non-techy, but it's not native to the way they operate. So with that, I would like to share a few thoughts about our vision. Our vision is quite simple. First and foremost, we wanted to have an easy way to collect the data so we can make the process of budgeting very easy. We had a target that in 5 minutes you should be 95% accurate. Why? It's because today, if you want to know the price of another commodity, which may be not as sophisticated as clinical trials, you may be able to Google it and find out what that cost should be. So we believe that costing by no means should be a mystery. So that was our first goal when we started on this path of vision. Benchmarking should be available to everyone because the discussion is not so much about the rates. Rates have been around, they are inflated every year by a certain percentage, highly predictable. They are adjusted because of exchange rates, but they have been consistent. The discussion is about effort. How much does it take you to perform an activity? And then the effort has to do with the operational strategy and infrastructure of the CRO. And two CROs being the same and pricing a resource at the exact same price can have vastly different pricing model because of the efficiency or because of where resources are located and because of their process, because they over-allocate VPs to tasks and a million other of shades that what we are trying to do is expose the mystery behind the effort. And then we want transparency. We want to just break that wall of, hey, I am a sponsor and I am a CRO. We should be working together. We are pushing the envelope and saying, you sponsors in this room should be able to generate a quote yourself. You should not need to go to a big CRO. If you know their rates, if you have negotiated their process, you could be creating the budget yourself, and then the discussion is about operational excellence. It's about strategy. It's about the best employment of process and resources. So move away from the budget management, which should be a tiny percentage of the work that you spend in selecting vendors, and shift towards excellence, quality, governance, and execution. And finally, we really stand behind your ability as sponsors and as CROs to have the bids in a database. And this is no thrilling technology, having bids in a database, but it's so powerful because we sit on a huge data trove which is unleashed. I can't imagine how many thousands of proposals, Bridget, you had at Merck, or how many you have, Samir, in Novartis. But what are we doing in a better understanding the underlying data that we have in our own data trove? How can we truly say that we started at point A and we ended at point Z 5 beta years later? And what have we done in between? So digitizing the Bitgrids for us, it's fundamental. And I will end by saying that I do believe in predictive analytics. I do believe that the data is, yes, more valuable than oil, and that it not only can be mined, but we can use it intelligently to feed it back into our process so we can make better informed decisions. So with all this long introduction on a live technology demo, hopefully the internet's not going to fail me, let me show you Clinical Maestro. So I will try to touch on several key points, and I will like to touch on the ability to create studies very rapidly, seamlessly create RFPs, and take the mystery out of due diligence using your own processes. So Clinical Maestro is a set of applications. I just landed on a dashboard, which I chose to be about the costs. You can organize all of your studies and around the programs in your organization. And the first thing I would like to do, and I will challenge you to count 5 minutes and see if I can get a budget out. So it's, okay, I have 14 minutes right here. So what I would like to do is create a very simple study and then show you how we deconstructed the Bitgrid. So I will just create one study starting from a wizard. I will just give it a clean biz demo name. All of the meta file is meant to help you find the bid later in your database. So I'm not going to fill it out for now. We can model different types of studies, like non-drug studies, such as observational studies or interventional studies. And we have a different modeling path for randomized or not randomized. I'm just going to do a classic blind study with, let's say, 100 patients in 2 groups. I can connect studies, so, or I can assume that there are only new patients entering the study. And the system is asking for some very basic assumptions. So as I'm planning, I might have an enrollment target. So let's say I want to enroll in 1 year, and I might want to, protocol says a 16-week treatment, and maybe 6 weeks of follow-up. And whatever is in the protocol for screen out and dropout rate. And we have 3 planning modes. You can plan at the country level, regional, or global level. The difference is, behind the scene, we are constantly blending rates. So if your study is in Brazil and US, we are going to look at Brazil and US to blend rates. If you are saying 5 countries, because it's non-specific, we are going to be looking at global aggregate rates in order to determine the cost. And then, because I was planning at the country mode, I'm going to choose the country and make it really easy for today. We can say how many sites are involved, let's say 20 sites. I can build a schedule of events, or I can go back and build a schedule of events later. And the system is asking how much data do you need to monitor, and I'm just going to put a random 20, 10, and maybe another 10. So I think I spent maybe 3 minutes so far. What I wanted to show you is what you can do with the 3 minutes worth of data. So what we did is we just created a baseline scenario. Behind the scene, we have accessed our business intelligence database to create a full operational plan. We have intelligent defaults that follow protocol complexity, study phase, and indication. So what we have just done is we created a plan that includes US. So you can see the overview of the plan right here. We calculated the patient timelines. We didn't put any data behind the investigator grant. And we can edit at the country level. If you had more countries, that would automatically aggregate to the region or to the study group if you have more study groups. So you can navigate at all levels. You can see information about your sites, your estimated site activation timelines, your estimated site visits. You can pretty much change anything that is a system default. A system default means it's coming from our intelligence database. So for example, you may say, I can go to the US and I can say in the US, we are going to have only 50% of the sites SIV'd. That's not necessarily the case, but it defaults to 100%. So that will automatically change the estimate of the site visits and effort associated with that. The system will generate the timelines. You can build your central assumptions, which is what type of protocol, how many protocol amendments, are you going to have an investigator meeting? You just can simply add one in. Let's just put one in Argentina. Here you go. It starts with A. The next thing is a deconstruction of the Bitgrid. So what we have done, we have spent a lot of time deconstructing the Bitgrid, which is looking at inherent activities that we all perform in a clinical study taking away any particular organization of those activities. If you actually look across the industry, different Bitgrids, the activities are very much the same. They may be called differently. They may be called project management versus vendor management, and it could be into a section called vendor management or in a section called study management. But essentially, what we are talking about common activities. So what we have done is we wanted to, instead of using a Bitgrid, shop for services. So the way you shop is by adding them to your cart. So say, I do want clinical study management. So you can shop for that particular activity. And then when you go within clinical study management, you say, well, what do I want to buy? Well, maybe I want to buy only site selection and approval, or I can buy all of the above. So you can do infinite number of buy versus not buy type scenarios. And then the system is asking me, what do you want to do within site selection? I can select all of the activities, or I can say I only want to do the site qualification visits. So you can create a Bitgrid based on your need at any point in time. So let's just maybe take them all for now. And that would lead you to actually creating a full budget for that particular activity. So you see the result is almost instant. The way you evaluate the data is by managing a RACI throughout the entire cycle of outsourcing. So we have a RACI in plan mode, we have a RACI when we outsource, we have a RACI when we go through change orders, all the way to the end, and we can modify that RACI and the effort associated with a particular activity. You can see all of the service assumptions are grouped together. You can see information about the particular units. You can export anything. There's no concept of having a section with reports has been deconstructed too. You should be report from anywhere. In any screen, you should be able to ship it to a report if you wanted to. You can look at unit distribution. You can edit anything. So you can go back and edit all of our defaults in a dynamic fashion. So if you have a preferred way of outsourcing all the time, you can use a template. So for example, you can go in a task template, and I say I want this to be full service study. And then it will populate all of the services that are associated with the full service in an instant. Once you have done all of the work, of course you can do as many scenarios as you want by simply creating a scenario. I won't do it live in the meeting because I won't have time, but we can show you how this works. But most importantly, in many organizations, the planning and budgeting of clinical trials is done elsewhere from the sourcing. So there is no easy way to collect assumptions and connect the dots. So what we wanted to do is to make it easy to benchmark, source, and connect the dots. So the way we are doing it is by embedding the sourcing tool into our application. So in order to create an RFP, you just say, I want to create a new sourcing budget. And maybe we're going to do another CRO. You can pick your department if you want to, or leave all of this blank. And the system is going to ask for which study you want to do it. Well, let's outsource the ClinBiz demo. Which scenario do I want to outsource? I only have one in this case. And when do I want to start the outsourcing? Let's do it this Friday. The system is going to recognize all of the services that are needed in order to initiate an RFP, which you may not all use in the same RFP. So you can say, no, I'm not going to, EDC is needed, but I'm not going to include it in this RFP. Biostat is also needed, but I'm not going to include it either. I'm only going to include these activities, and I might include patient payments, and it's not a pre-selected activity. That means it's just not in my plan, but I can procure it. So that will automatically generate a variance versus your initial plan in a very powerful and dynamic way. So let's click Save. And I like to say the magic happens because that creates the RFP. The RFP can be, of course, adapted to your needs. It's the classic RFP that you've seen and done a million times. You have to have a lead for it. All of the communication happens through the system. You put your own description in. The system will calculate the project timelines, so you can edit anything in Maestro. So this is a system default. You can override it. You can then look at your entire team and say who's working on what and why do I have 5 bid defenses on the same day? Maybe that's too much work to do. So you can, as an outsourcing manager, view your entire calendar is generated out of Maestro. The study profile is already in. You don't have to copy it again. It's moved to the RFP. All of your studying assumptions have moved too, but you can change them again. It will only create a variance to a plan. So I can say for this RFP, I do want to include France. So all I need to do is give France some patience, or I can send it without countries and have my CRO put the data for me, and then compare to my original plan without disclosing the plan to the CRO. I can very easily ask questions. We have a sick amount of questions, I will tell you that, but I'm sure you all have some that we haven't asked. So to ask a question, you look in our database and you simply click a button. So for example, you click one, or you can click all, and they are organized by topic. What this will do, it will create a question database that you can look up from your phone. You can always look up of what did CRO1 answered into the last RFP I sent them. And if you are in a non-transactional strategic partnership, you won't be asking questions unless you are doing some major qualification. But you have a qualification database that you can look up to, you can challenge your partner on, or you can simply appreciate their progress in a way that is truly dynamic. You can ask quantitative questions that will also create your quantitative database. And by quantitative, I mean numeric questions, such as a classic question we all ask: how many years of experience do you have in this geography? That just makes it easy. We all do these activities already. What Maestro does, it makes you perform the same activity faster and better, and in a way that the information lives with you, with your entity, regardless of where the individuals are. So you can put requests and say, dear CRO, please send me your third-party proposals along the way and your staff resume. You don't have to do this clicking all the time once you set up your template. And then you select your performance criteria, and these are at the bid level, but we are now moving into the performance surveys at the oversight and governance level, which you can also generate from Maestro. You can just select them. I won't spend much time on doing these. But I do want to tell you what happens when you click Send to Vendor. When you click Send to Vendor, you are inviting your providers to your realm. They will get an email. They will log in your realm. You control what they see, and you start sharing information down from the profile to the planning a clinical pipeline together. They are working in Maestro. They are logging in on their side with the access controlled by you. And you can ask them to do a bid to spec. This would be requiring only effort and cost. And you can allow them to change assumptions. Or you can allow them to task and mess up your bid grid that you just created fluidly. So we are all looking at ways in which we can be flexible and get our suppliers to be on board. So I'm just going to send it to this vendor one contact. And off you go. So the efficiencies in the RFP process are great because we are basically eliminated a lot of transfer points, such as assumptions. We have a budget built in the RFP. We have a way to track the RFP dynamically. The RFP is forever in your database. You can look it up, you can modify it, you can revise it. And let's see how a bid comes back. So when a bid comes back, let's look now at bids. This one has been awarded. The bids come back from Maestro. They can be compared among themselves and instantly against a benchmark. So if you do single bidding, which is oftentimes the way to bid, you can just assume that there was only one vendor here. You would just say compare to RFP. What this is doing is going to compare it to the benchmark you created right before you started the bid. You can also bid without having a benchmark. So this in itself will create a benchmark that you can analyze at all dimensions. In this case, you can see what was the budget difference versus the RFP. And what we are trying to do with Maestro is keep provoking you to ask the question, why? So you might say, why is there a difference between the RFP of whatever, 100,000 in this area? And then would ask the question is it the number of units that's causing it? No. Still the same number of units. I used to have a highly qualified people in my team do these side-by-side Excel spreadsheets, and I think they hated me for it. And I kept asking them, no, not just the total cost. Please show me the difference in hours. Please show me what I'm going to show you with a click at the bottom. Please show me the unit cost. That's what I care about. And then I would say, well, how much effort are we talking about? This is a mock-up example. And you would see that we're talking about 12 versus 10 hours. To do this on a 300-line Bitgrid is just discouraging. It's not impossible. And by the time you are done analyzing, you don't feel like looking at that bit anymore. It's so discouraging, and no wonder you read 30% of the proposal, because it's just not easy to do it. So what we are trying to do, again, is taking what we do today and make it easier. And I'm not talking about science fiction technology. I'm talking about down-to-earth Azure cloud and innovation in approach and thinking. Going back to an environment in which you have multiple bidders, I really like this feature, so I'm proud. As you can see, I have to show it to you, is we can go down to compare questions and answer to questions, which sometimes, this was another task that I would ask my team to do. I would say, can you please do me a little summary and say, what did they answer at question 1 versus question 2? Or you see the questions coming in the RFP now from the sponsors in an Excel spreadsheet where they're asking you to answer in an Excel box. You cannot attach images. Even responding in Excel, it's just such a painful way of thinking when you can just have the answers side by side. And it will take you 2 minutes to look at them. And then you can go back and say, what did this guy ask on my other phase 3 study that I outsourced? And what effort did they use on a program level outsourcing? We've already done the phase 1. We've already done the phase 2. We are doing the phase 3. Why are we still spending so much money on feasibility? So we are building a tool that will enable you to ask better questions. Where we are going, since I'm over the time, we are going into the realm of vendor management and intelligence-based reforecasting. And I will tell you how we do that. Every time a bid goes through Maestro, if we are consented to collecting the bid, it adds to our database. And we're not looking at cost only. We are looking at cost. We are looking at about enrollment. We are looking at cost drivers. And then feeding that back into the database, but not only on the plan basis, but to reforecast the outcome of the trial. And we are just scratching the surface of mining that intelligence to predict from a business perspective and a cost perspective where the trial is going to end based on actuals. The other part that we're truly excited about is moving truly into vendor management. And the way we are doing vendor management, we are currently seeking a strategic partner to develop the platform with us. And we've got overwhelming interest in, I want to get it done. I want to get us involved in building this tool. The way we are looking at metrics is the metrics should work very much like an RFP to some extent. You can do vendor master data management, but you can request your CROs, instead of sending you your monthly metrics report, just to send you the data. Then you calculate the metrics yourself. Then you can compare vendors and metrics and outcomes in a way that is highly standardized in the industry. And you can use, again, intelligence and trending to predict where the patterns may be and where the risk may be in your portfolio by assessing governance, not only at the cost level, operational level, soft level, we call it like the performance surveys, and embedding contract elements as well. And I'm very intrigued about the next generation, which is smart contracting, whereas we must go. We must be able to do a budget in 5 minutes, an RFP in 5, and then a smart contract in another 5, and be done with it, and use the assets in our teams to do more analysis and less paralysis. So this is my message to you. I'm very thankful for the 35 minutes you've given me, and I'm all open for your questions.